everyone, it's me Bethany. You are watching the Sassy Show and we are today at the Fetish and Kink Summit run by Seed Talks. Let's see what the guest speakers had to say.
So many people look at kink and don't realize that they have those desires.
I think consent is so much more of like a feeling, especially with kink as well. We have to lean into those sensations, I think.
I basically advocate for disability and sex and for disabled people to have orgasms with autonomy.
What I found my intersectionality is that it's allowed me to step out the mainstream system. I have permission to not be like everyone else.
When it comes to kink, so many of us are disabled or neurodivergent.
Power dynamics are literally everywhere, like all kinds of relationships. All it is in kink is that it's like consciously engaged with.
I am with one of the amazing speakers who came to this summit today. Munjeeta, thank you for joining me.
Welcome.
What were your talks about? I mean, I was in it, but for our audience, what were your talks about?
So I was talking, my talk was about kinky relationships. So I'm a sex and relationship therapist, so I wanted to kind of bring in like relationship fundamentals and then what happens or what can happen, I guess, in relationships when you throw kink into the mix. And then also like how we can show up in relationships as like empowered individual people. And then I did a workshop on consent, which was stolen from Betty Martin almost entirely, who is the Wheel of Consent creator. And the Consent Academy, I should give them a shout out to. It's very good.
Yeah, you mentioned them a few times in your talk. I'm very intrigued. So you changed your whole approach.
Yeah. So they talk about consent as like a shared feeling, which I just think is really beautiful. And I think it kind of speaks into like the intangible nature of consent, because I think we get a bit sidetracked with like checklists and kind of doing consent. And actually, I think consent is so much more of like a feeling, especially with kink as well. Like we have to lean into those sensations, I think.
And that's something I really enjoyed about your talk was you brought us a green, orange and red flags.
Oh, the green, orange and red.
And the orange flags. I just appreciate the fact that you're talking about so many nuanced situations that often we don't talk about. And it might be, oh yeah, that seems like a good thing, but maybe in that context, it's not.
I get really frustrated with binaries in general in life. So I think anything that we can do to kind of like just break those a little bit is good. Yeah, just put them apart. And I put being in therapy as an orange flag, which I realise is a little bit controversial as a therapist. But I think what I meant by that was that like being in therapy in and of itself is not a green flag. There's a lot of work that goes in around therapy, and just showing up to a therapy session once a week or once a fortnight isn't necessarily enough. There needs to be some kind of shift and change in behaviour and things like that as well. So that's what I would like to just kind of clarify.
It brought back this idea that even if you meditate, it doesn't mean you're a good person, you know? I mean, you try. Meditate on that, guys. Try. What would you like to change within society around the approach and the mindset we take to fetish and kink?
Yeah, so I spend almost all of my days talking to adults who have like shame around sex. So I'd really like to change on a practical level is education. I do a little bit of work for Split Banana, so I go into like schools and do some like sex ed for kids. And part of the reason I do that is because I deal with the impacts of not having had sex ed all day, every day. We need some like more nuanced sex ed that isn't just about fear, isn't just about preventing pregnancies and STIs. And I think it's shifting and changing a little bit. But I think if we have some more like pleasure consent-based sex ed that's obviously age appropriate, if that's my fundamental thing, I think that would hopefully shift a bit of the shame that we feel as adults.
I am with the fabulous host of the panel discussion. Could you introduce yourself for us, please?
Yes. My name is El Adana. I'm a femdom and kink specialist with a background in clinical psychology.
Wow, that already makes me feel like I need to go down. What did you enjoy about the panel discussion that you brought to this summit today?
I think a lot of these things can feel fairly academic and they can lean towards theory. So what I really wanted to do with the panel that I brought was shift the balance and include lived experience. And so I curated a panel from people who do have lived experience of disability and kink in the scene and sometimes feel excluded from it. And so we were able to really bring that to the forefront of the discussion. And that was really beautiful to me.
Making it way more of a personal experience, maybe, than a professional, psychological one. But you seem to have a crossover understanding of both worlds.
Yeah. So I worked in a clinical psychiatric hospital. And I apply a lot of psychology to the work that I do as a femdom. The most important sexual organ is actually the brain.
So really it's through our brains that we can start to engage more with our bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the brain is where kink starts. Everything about our lived experience and senses is processed by our brains. And so knowing that, I think it's really important to engage our brains. You know, kink is as much a thought exercise as a lived experience one, and you need both sides.
Would you say it also takes an element of practice to be able to tune into both of those elements?
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually autism has helped me bring those two things together in my life, because the intellectual academic side and the theoretical, rubber meets the road, if you will, when it comes to actually like applying those things either from psychological theory or consent and kink theory into lived experiences with clients and in my personal life.
What would you like to see change within society around the conversation of fetish and kink?
I think so many people look at kink and don't realize that they have those desires. I would say probably most of us have kinks or fetishes if we're allosexual. I personally identify as gray ace or gray sexual, but that doesn't mean I don't have things I don't like. It just means that I'm more selective about who I engage those things with. And I think what I would like to see change from society is that we encourage more curiosity for everyone. I grew up really religious, and
So the fucker.
that particular subculture didn't make space for the curiosities I had. And so I spent a long time worrying that something was deeply wrong with me, especially because I had, a desire to what felt like hurt people, but it turns out that wasn't the case at all. It was an expression of care and love, but I didn't have the right vocabulary and tools. So I think repealing Section 28 in the UK has only gone just far enough to kind of let us have these conversations openly. But what we really need to do is change the way that we talk about sex publicly and educate people before they're out of school and then have to come, to specialized events because they don't have the access to really engage those things in a way that's safe and a little bit more neutral in their primary places of living.
Another wonderful human who was on the panel discussion today. I'm here with Libby. Hi, Libby. Can you introduce yourself to the beautiful audience of the Sassy Show and tell us a bit more about all the things you do? Because it's quite a lot.
I'm Libby and I run House of Arcane, which is a fetish club predominantly for people who are less able-bodied. And it's a place for people to feel comfortable and empowered and free of shame as well, and still to explore their perversions and kinkiness. But I'm also a disabled rights advocate. That's really important to me. So I take it very seriously. I'm always listening, always making sure that people who don't have a voice or who don't feel able to speak about things like disability, they have a channel to do that. And so I'm always saying to people, you can come to me. I will be the voice if you need to. I will give people a kick up the bum if they're an organizer.
Yeah, you spoke on the panel a lot about accessibility. It was obviously something that came up, but you brought it to our attention how easy it is for people just to employ people who actually can talk from that informed place to advise and make things possible.
Yeah, I think a lot of work needs to be done. I think it's really actually not as difficult as people think to be inclusive and accessible. People are under the impression that it has to cost a hell of a lot of money, but it doesn't if you make concessions elsewhere. And I think people who are disabled are always relegated to like the last thing, like an afterthought. Oh yeah, and the disabled people. Oh yeah, don't forget the accessibility report. With a little footnote at the bottom of every email. We're the last, usually on a talk or a conference or something, when half of the people have gone home already. So we're really tired of being like an afterthought, and really tired of that when it comes to kink and this community, because so many of us are disabled or neurodivergent, more than you even think. It's not like a 5% of kinky people are struggling with a disability. No, it's like 40 to 50%. It's a huge amount. So why would you relegate such a huge portion of your attendees to the very bottom?
It feels like just, plain ignorance.
Well, I guess if you've never experienced being disabled, you tend not to think about it. Like, I know someone who had never thought about it before, and then they broke their leg, and suddenly they couldn't access a venue, or they needed the disabled toilet, or they needed a chair. And when they looked around them at these clubs that they'd been going to for so many years, and they realized it wasn't available, they were suddenly like a light bulb went off. And I was like, it's that simple. And I think one of the amazing people on the panel, Roxy, said that the way to think about it is we're all at some point going to be disabled in some way through age or an accident, or hopefully it doesn't happen, but an illness. It's not a conversation that's just about a very small portion of people. It's a conversation that affects everyone.
Yeah. I'm very grateful for everyone who brought their perspective to that panel, and it was definitely the highlight of the day for me. I think it was for Angel as well, who's behind the camera. Hey, Angel. One last question for you. I'd love to know what you would like to change about the way that society thinks about fetish and kink.
I think stop stigmatizing it. Stop being frightened of it. Learn about it. If you don't understand something, take a moment to think about why people might be interested in that, why it might be of value to people. Why is it that the community within kink and fetish is so diverse and beautiful? Why do all these amazing people congregate together? There must be something really beautiful in kink and fetish. It's really not this scary, misunderstood thing that everyone thinks it is. It's a really empowering and gorgeous place for us to explore and find a lot of liberation and freedom across the board.
Thank you, Libby. Amen to that, honey. If people want to find you online, where should they go?
They should go to Instagram, go to House of Arcane.
Honeys, I'm with the one and only Roxy. Hey, sweetie. Hi. So, Roxy, you were part of the panel discussion.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about exactly what you are all about?
So I'm Roxy Murray. I go as the multiple sclerosis fashionista online. I am a disability rights advocate, and I am a sex positive person. I basically advocate for disability and sex, and for disabled people to have orgasms with autonomy.
Yeah, that's huge, which was one of the things that you were talking about today in the panel discussion. And it was, people were clapping and clapping and clapping.
Thank you. I just think people forget that disabled people actually want to have sex, and a lot of people don't think we should be able to have sex. So I'm here to tell you that we are going to have orgasms and just deal with it. And that's like my vibe. And obviously it's about kink and intersectionality, and as an intersectional person that's pansexual, queer and disabled, I just want to bring my perspective, but also tell people about the things that disabled people get up to, but also that we need to have safe sex. And it's something that was taken away from me through my disability, through like sensations and stuff. And then obviously I didn't know if I was going to be sexually empowered anymore. And when I figured out I thought, let's bring the whole community with me.
Yeah, I feel like that was one of the biggest takeaways for me, actually, understanding and hearing the voices of people who go through so many different nuanced experiences, and how society at large can cater to that and hold it. And you said something, I think, about how at any point in anyone's life, they can also be someone who becomes disabled.
It's the only intersection that anyone can enter. So you can't just be gay. You can't change your race. But anyone can have an accident or acquire a disability at any age in their life. So it's something that I feel like we should always advocate for, because it actually helps everyone, no matter what stage of life you're in. Eventually you're going to get older. So the things that you do for us definitely helps everyone else. So that's my kind of vibe.
With that in mind, do you have one thing that you wish would change within society in regards to the conversation around fetish and kink?
Make spaces accessible so I can turn up and I can get in and I can come with the rest of you.
Yes! And while looking fabulous.
Always looking fabulous because you've got to serve an outfit, but I can't get into the venue. I can't serve the outfit.
Like, make those things accessible. Thank you so much, Roxy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm here with the final panelist who is on the talk today. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
Can you introduce yourself to our sassy audience and tell us a bit about what you do?
So my name is Fopi, but today I was doing the thing that I'm used to doing, which is representing the intersectionality and how it plays in the fetish and the kink society. Plus the fact I have ASD, I'm a lesbian, single parent, disabled Black woman, and the others. So that's what I'm really here to represent on the panel.
What was it about that panel that you felt was really important for people to hear?
The thing that happens when you're walking into sexuality is that everything you see in the media forces you to remember you're othered. You know, lesbian movies, the two women get together, one of them dies, there's the agony of it, or you always have to, every time I used to go to the LGBTQ film festival in the beginning, I used to leave tormented that I was that. Anytime I watch a movie about Black people, it's about slavery, it's about this, it's about that. So I'm not saying information doesn't need to be there, but you need to balance it out. I wanted to go, here are the things that make it hard, but isn't there a joy? Because what I found my intersectionality is that it's allowed me to step out the mainstream system. I have permission to not be like everyone else. How bloody unique is that? I've had to. So I think about things differently, but that's not going to match Fopi. What's Fopi going to do? I am my own yardstick.
I feel like you're giving yourself a lot of agency, and through your agency, you're offering other people an example of that agency.
That's what I want to do. That's what I think society needs. Meet the human, not the narrative that says a Black person should be like this, a woman should be like this, a single parent should be like this. And the more you have that empowerment, the more society could just go suck somewhere rather than you having to fulfill someone's dream about what these very different versions of society mean. You know, don't get stuck in it. And I think that's what I wanted to do today.
Yeah, you really did. I feel like that leads me on to the last question, which is what you would like to see change in society around the conversation of fetish and kink.
Yeah. I wanted to change from this thing of alternative. I wanted to become not mainstream, but I wanted to become something we openly talk about. I deliberately out myself in every way in the first thing. I want that to be normal. I will now immediately take out my tablets and take it. I want society to not take things at the service of the stage. We are all individually different. We really are. So if you can accommodate for difference, you can accommodate for all of us.
All of our differences.
For all our differences.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you. I do love this position, by the way. There's sorts of things I can do with that position. Oh, well, you know, I was thinking you could stay with my parent. I did that. Anyway, nice to meet you all.
Hello, everyone. It's me, Bethany. You are watching The Sassy Show, and we are today at the Fetish and Kink Summit run by Seed Talks. And I'm with Katie. Katie, you talked to us this morning. You were running a beautiful, beautiful discussion.
Cute.
Please tell us what you came here to share.
So I was talking around the psychology of power dynamics within kink. So things around like power play, authority transference, power exchange, all the good stuff, kind of BDSM, but really the cerebral element of what people get from engaging in power.
Yeah, you really broke it down in a way that made me feel quite curious to even understand my own sense of joy from power exchange.
I mean, I think a big part is about knowledge of self and exploring self. One of the big things that comes across when people do speak about engaging in power play is what they learn, not just about themselves, but about like their relationships and how they connect with other people. It's really quite a big topic.
Yeah, and it's something that I feel you helped us understand doesn't have to just exist in the bedroom or a romantic relationship. It can be in lots of different areas of our life.
Absolutely. I mean, power dynamics are literally everywhere, like all kinds of relationships. All it is in kink is that it's like consciously engaged with. And people are really aware of power dynamics, then playing with it, literally power play, and then learning through that about how they kind of engage in the world and with their kind of inner self.
And you do this professionally as a therapist, am I right?
I do. I work through, I guess it's kink-aware therapy, but yeah, I'm a GSRD therapist, so I'm connected to pink therapy, and I work a lot with sex, which is great.
Talking of sex, one thing, Katie, you would love to change within society about what people view kink, fetish, and BDSM as?
I would love for it to stop being pathologized, particularly in therapy spaces.
I think we need more spaces for like freedom to discuss and explore things without feeling that there's going to be judgment or it's going to be blamed on something.